are doing here. We are the SWIT. SWIT is Sustainable Wealth Creation Based on Innovation and Technology. I started this group in 2007, more than 12, 15 years now. We start with working with the innovation for technological innovation to give a competitive advantage to companies. But since 2011, we started the SWIT again with a new kind of approach, which is sustainability. So we have more than 10 years working on circular economy and the systemic vision of sustainability for developing countries. Also, well, probably I talked to Ken about this, but we start working with the coalition for circular economy for Latin America, with the UNEP. UNEP is United Nations for Environmental Program of United Nations. So we are working together with them, trying to develop and to spread the knowledge or the practices of circular economy in Latin America. In fact, we have been doing 2 surveys with the UNEP. One is trying to find out the training institutions that are working in serious circular economy in Latin America. We didn't find many, very few universities, like Universidad de Sao Paulo in Brazil, Universidad de los Andes in Colombia, ourselves in Monterrey Institute of Technology here in Mexico. But very few companies, besides the large accounting corporations, they are working on this. But I mean, we have a lack of serious institutions who provide circular economy practices and for development of circular businesses. So also, we've been trying to look for circular cities, very few in Latin America. In fact, in the last months, we have been working with the Córdoba, Argentina, and they are doing a real good effort working on circular economy, making the conditions so that the city of Córdoba is able to support small entrepreneurs and small initiatives on circular economy. But this is very few in Latin America. So why this happens? I mean, why I just saw the Norway regional circular regional project in Norway. You know, we have a lot of infrastructure. We have all companies and the government is supporting this. Here in Latin America, we are in serious problems because we don't have the conditions. Cities don't have the condition, governments don't have enough governance. So why this happens now? So that's why we started the SWIT, trying to generate this infrastructure before we start working on applications. So we start the SWIT. Next, Eduardo, please. So the problems in Latin America are enormous problems. But I just make a focus on some of them. We have the wealth concentration on a few individuals. This makes difficult for us to spread the circular economy thinking because we need this type of clustering and supporting of large corporations. Here in Latin America is completely different. Just a very few companies like Bimbo. It's a bakery company is doing this type of things, Pet Start in Mexico, but very few corporations make this effort to support circular economy. The full rule of law, this is one of the, many people ask me why I put this as a priority, you know, because without the rule of law, it's impossible to make this type of structure, no? To develop this type of structure. So the government and even the company don't respect the projects, the conditions. So it's the region has a lack of rule of law. Also, the large depredation of natural resources by the extractive economies is large. We have been doing this survey for many years, trying to find out this type of problems. So that's we need to have a sort of infrastructure to be able to start working in a circular economy, as I just saw in the Norway case. Okay, so next, Eduardo. So the most consequences of this is the generated by the linear, no? We are linear cities, linear corporations, linear companies. It's quite difficult to break the paradigm of the linear paradigm. Also, remember that the circular economy is a disruptive innovation. So we have to handle the practice and the application of circular economy as an innovation to the companies, but a disruptive innovation. So it's difficult for them to start this sustainability strategy, new rules, new regulations from the governments. So it's quite difficult for us to do this because companies are on the surviving level. No, we are not a very well doing a large of global issues now. Most of the SMEs are on the surviving level, so they need more than just a promise of recycling or things like that, because it's not enough. Okay, so we start the SWIT next. Eduardo, we start the SWIT. SWIT is sustainable wealth creation based on disruptive innovation and enabling technologies. The SWIT is a think tank. The SWIT is a framework that we use to apply this infrastructure to leverage and empower the SMEs and the cities in order to perform this type of exercises. Okay, I made that to make sustainability a viable and profitable strategy. It's quite difficult for us because, again, sustainability is very expensive to apply. The strategies are difficult to implement. So we had to change the paradigm. We had to break the old linear paradigm, and that's difficult for most companies and most executives here in Latin America. So the SWIT started in 2007, as I mentioned before. In 2011, we start working on this approach, working very, very deep on sustainability. We made the first contact with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in those years. So I started trying to bring all the learning from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to Latin America and trying to adapt this knowledge, these rules, these practices here. And we have a lot of difficulty. So we had to start our own methodologies based on these structures, but we have to start our own methodologies under different conditions. Okay, so the SWIT has 5 pillars, Eduardo. 5 pillars. We are working on five directions, 5 structures. The first one is we have a systems view and grow. It's a systemic approach. Basically, it's a systemic approach. We have a very strong basis or fundamentals on systems thinking. So we use this approach on clustering, on all of these ways of making not just specific practices on circular economy. We're trying to work on circular value extended systems. So the word systems is, for us, is quite important in Latin America. We try to make this like fundamental for the application of this type of circular economy. Second issue is sustainable disruptive innovation. Again, we had to try to work on innovation, not just specific efforts on circular economy. We had to create the innovation systems, regional innovation systems, in order to work here in Latin America. The third one is circular economy extended value systems. Again, the word systems, not just initiatives. We work more than initiatives. We have to work on systems. A clustering strategy, try to work on clusters, to set up clusters in companies, with institutions, with academy, government. We had to set up the whole network. It's not easy for us because for each case we had to set up all the stakeholders together. So it's quite different from Europe, that Europe has already conscious on this type of approaches. We don't have this culture, so we have to promote the clustering. We have to promote the systems approach. And also we are trying to create, I saw that in Norway case has this type of entrepreneurial. We have a very, very strong area in conventional entrepreneurship, but we are training people, specific entrepreneurs on circular economy, circular business models, because it's quite different. The approach is quite different from one entrepreneur that is a linear from one circular entrepreneur. So we are working very, very hard on with the SWIT and this area. So we are going to present a case here for small and medium size companies, and Eduardo is going to present this case. And we are working, again, the most unprotected. They don't have any protection, they don't have any knowledge, they don't have any support, are the SMEs. Why? Because the large corporations use the knowledge and all the consulting from large consulting companies, but the SMEs, they are completely loose in this area. So we're trying to set up structures for the SMEs, and Eduardo is going to present this case. Go ahead, Eduardo.
Thank you, Carlos, and happy to be here. Quickly, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Eduardo Aguinaga. I've been working with Dr. Carlos Scheel since 2011 when the SWIT was started. I was starting my PhD back in the day. I was also a fellow of this Mitch MacArthur Fellowship on 2015, where I met you, Ken. If you don't remember me, I think you have met lots of people. Then we meet again here at Egade in Monterrey when we did a workshop on circular economy. And after that, I went to the industry. I was the circular economy leader for Heineken. And right now let's say I'm in the academy doing research and teaching courses around circular economy, and of course, also doing research. So today, as Carlos mentioned, I'm gonna present you quickly one of the papers that we have been doing in the SWIT group, regarding especially the learning from failure and success, we call it like this, but be especially focusing on what is the role of circular economy and SMEs, and what are actually the challenges and the barriers, both the barriers and enablers that the SMEs face on emerging economies such as in Mexico. So I'm pretty sure that you know most of the problems that we have, and I think we all agree that, for example, circular economy is of course an alternative for decoupling. There are certain barriers and enablers that we know that it exists, but most of the time they are identified and developing, well, in developed countries, and we don't know that much about developing countries and how is it that they can affect the, as Carlos was mentioning at the last slide, entrepreneurial activity around circular economy. So we have endeavored in this research onto knowing more about what are the, let's say, the multiple pressures that SMEs in emerging markets face. One of them would be, and that's part of the reason we're having this conversation, is we know for sure that there are no enabling conditions, or not enough enabling conditions for these SMEs aligned to circular economy to thrive. Again, another perspective is their size are really, really small, and the resources are really scant as well. They are, as Carlos mentioned, focused on surviving. Their strategies right now, and even after the pandemic and with all this economic turmoil, they're actually surviving. There are no companies that they want to focus just on circular economy because it is good for nature and good for the business, but they're right now focusing just on surviving. And also, one of the things that we have identified, even in other research or previous researches, is that in Latin America, for example, there's a lot of lack of trust, and there is this impossibility of clustering strategies among multiple stakeholders. So overall, the SMEs needs to further study and help to leverage on these circular initiatives in the regions, and in order for us to accelerate the transition. So I'm going to focus on, first of all, what are the barriers? And we have the barriers and the enablers. And first, we have identified, of course, by the literature review, lots of these barriers, but we wanted to identify what are the most pressing ones and the ones that we have to face in order for us to create these enabling conditions that we talked about. So we have, first of all, external barriers that SMEs encounter. I'm not going to go into detail in each one of them, but we identify 5 of these main external barriers. The first one is user behavior. And we know that especially in Latin America and emerging markets, there is a low willingness to pay because of they're in the, especially, well, also the consumers are in this survival mode right now. So their willingness to pay for a sustainable or more circular product is not so easily done. The throwaway conduct still prevails. There is a reluctance to change, but also there's a sort of a bad perception of recycling or reuse products. So we have this, let's say, cultural barrier, first of all. Then we have the regulatory. And I think we all know this. There are no incentives for circular economy. There is unstable political and a lot of corruption, especially as Carlos mentioned before. The rule of law is really almost absent. So this is difficult as well. So there's a lack of effective collaboration among the stakeholders, and we're gonna get to that in the supply chain, let's say, dimension. There's also another external barrier, which is infrastructure. As you know, there's a lack of infrastructure, especially in Latin America and emerging countries. There's no appropriate technologies to deal with the possibility of recycling, reusing, refurbishing, remanufacturing. So this makes the waste dispersion quite an issue for us. Then we have on the supply chain side, lack of trust in sustainable products or supply chain, and of course, a lack of integration that we were talking about. And now in the final, let's say, dimension of the external barriers, the economic one. So there's a lack of access to capital. So we don't see that much possibilities of funding these small and medium enterprises. And there's also an uneven playing field between the linear versus the circular, let's say, business models. So overall, these are the external barriers that we identify that are prevailing in this emerging economy. Then we move to internal barriers. What happens with internal to the company? So of course we have a big gap of knowledge. There's a lot of lack of awareness of what actually circular economy is. We even have talked about circular washing sometimes in the sense that there are many people that think that something is circular and they promote it like this, and it is not actually circular. So there's no information about circular economy enough within the knowledge of these companies. There's also a financial aspect, of course, large cost of investments, lots of financial risks of endeavoring in a circular business model, which is also unknown to some extent. Then organizationally speaking, there's a risk aversion, of course, of managers. Most of the time, the top-bottom approach is not feasible in this context. Even though there is a more awareness of the sustainability aspect, there are most of the KPIs, for example, or STIs in the companies are still linear, so this is not an incentive. And the fourth one and last one about the internal barriers that we identify is also regarding the product and material characteristics. So there are design constraints, of course, lack of flexibility, and new processes and new ways of doing things within this small and medium enterprises, even though they are more flexible to some extent to bigger corporations. But not everything is bad. We also identify there are certain enablers that they can help and help these the companies that we survey and that we talked about and that we approach in this study. And the first one is that it has been a cultural switch, especially with younger generations. So there's the newer generations are more open to, let's say, product as a service, business models, or maybe even collaborating with the companies, customers with companies, or even new business models around circular economy. They have been more accepted recently. Regulatory speaking as well, there is certain enablers that, for example, governments have been starting to fund some sustainable things so far, not especially devoted to circular economy, but we have seen certifications and awards and a little bit of promotion, but we still need better public policies around this. Now, in infrastructure, of course, and I think this is something that probably most of you or many of you know, but Eunice Korhonen in 2001, remember, he published one of the principles of circular ecosystems, and one of them was the geographical proximity. And we found out that geographical proximity, again, is one of the most salient external enablers for this SMEs to transition to a more circular economy. And also the possibility of having available technologies and more the quality of finding more quality and sustainable materials. So again, this is another of these 5 dimensions of external enablers. Now, in the supply chain side, well, of course, one of the things that we found was the collaboration and trust, which is a big issue, especially in Latin America. Trust is something really difficult to overcome. And I would dare to say that even in previous research, we found that you can have, the source, you can have the material, you can have the finance, you can have all of these aspects, but the trust is not there. It is very, very difficult to transition. So, and last but not least, about the external enablers that we found, of course, economy, the economical aspect, access to financial tools we have already mentioned, and also the possibility of having private investors or even international prices around this was really, really helpful for the companies that we talked to in this case. And last but not least, there's the internal enablers as well within the companies that we focused on. It's knowledge. First of all, we found that the successful cases of these SMEs doing the transitions, they have correctly identified suppliers with low environmental impact, and they, let's say, talk with all of them and have a really, really close relationship. Also, one important thing, especially from the, let's say, the CEOs or the founders of these companies, is the ability to leverage on IoT or data intelligence. This was also an internal labor for the business model, the circular economy business model. Now, on the financial side, well, access to finance, most of these small and medium or even entrepreneurship were funded by peers or people close to the founder. But that's one of the enablers that we found out also, and the possibility of piloting programs to reduce the risk, the financial risk of endeavoring in this new sort of business model. Also, on the organizational side, we found out that the successful companies on this have a strong culture of sustainability. Most of them led by like young people with really conscious about sustainability, and of course a little bit more knowledge about circular economy. And some of the also internal enablers were the technical know-how of the processes and use of technology. And even when they were not so, let's say, savvy or tech savvy on this, they also outsource the technical activities. Last but not least is the product and material characteristics. Of course, one of these dimensions was the redesign of materials for recycling, reuse, upcycling. They was one of the main enablers to create this circular economy, let's say, supply chain of business model. So overall, I'm not going to take long on this. We don't have that much time. But as a conclusion of this research, we found out, of course, the emerging economies must have these enabling conditions, but they're still underdeveloped. And we wanted to know what are the conditions or what are the main dimensions we have to focus to create these enabling conditions. We, of course, require disruptive systemic change. And of course, we cannot carry on with this in every region as the same. So we have to take into the considerations of the contextual particularities of the region, especially in emerging economies. Now, the traditional CE framework are not enough, or sometimes we tend to look to developed countries and their success cases, which cannot be easily translated to another context. So we have to also bear that in mind. And we need this alignment to our business-driven systems that Carlos will talk to you about. So this is like just as a wrap up, and to continue with the SWIT approach, this is the reason why we have been working on this in this research group, the SWIT, of how do we are able to articulate the resources, making the conditions to transform the linear models into a circular one, especially under hostile, we call it hostile regional conditions. So this is pretty much what I have to share with you. And now back to Dr. Carlos Scheel.
Thank you, Eduardo. So now we have, when you saw this, we are doing the applied research lines for the SWIT for 2020 to 2025. We are working on 5 issues. First, we are working on a model for the sustainable plastic industry. That's even Andrea can do is now at the foundation, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, working on this model. and working for his PhD dissertation on this area. We are working on decoupling the economic growth from the environmental problems. It's a very, very important issue for us. Everybody wants to grow up in the economics, but they are producing a lot of waste and residues. The third one is sustainable and resilient cities, circular cities. Also, we have a methodology for circular cities. Also, the specific solutions like a green premium, like water, food in Latin America, trying to bring solutions with the circular economy in different cities in Latin America, in Guyana, British Guyana, in Colombia, and now working in Argentina also. And the last one, but the most important issue is how to make sustainability a viable and competitive business model. This is our most important issue now for research and development. And the next, well, the main achievements of the SWIT are, we are creating a movement. We are trying to create a movement in Latin America. We are creating a circular economy and systems thinking culture. Again, systems and circular economy together. We are developing capabilities for small and SMEs companies, trying to solve the disruptive, systemic, and circular innovation, because again, for us, it's not just in circular practices, but we need to change the innovation mindset to a disruptive, systemic, and circular innovation issue. We are creating decoupling, economic growth, and finally, this creating a critical mass community. So that's the SWIT and the impact. Next, Eduardo. The impact of SWIT, we have been working on more than 20 projects in Latin America and some other countries in Asia. The SWIT practices are implemented in Mexico, Colombia, British Guyana, Ecuador. We have articles where we are doing research. Again, the SWIT is research, it's a think tank, it's a research machinery. We are creating a lot of research, as you saw. Courses, we are implementing now online courses on the design of circular businesses. We have PhD students, and we have a lot of awards now from different business schools, because we are working on the education, we are working on the projects management, we are working on entrepreneurial, we are creating new entrepreneurs for our environment. So that's the SWIT. We want to give you a brief idea of what the SWIT is. The future is SWIT is creating the culture. We have to change the Latin American culture. Again, the entrepreneurial area is quite important, and to create infrastructure. The SWIT is an infrastructure to create this type of application. We have a lot of publications, and again, next, Eduardo, we are just finishing. We have books. We are working with the Inter-American Development Bank in a plastic issue. This one, the one in the center with Andrea Cantu. Next, Eduardo, we have now local publications here. It's in Spanish, but they are good for our customers here in Latin America. Next, Eduardo. So the idea is to create tools, to create skills. And so that's the purpose of the SWIT. No, we have a lot of projects in Latin America. We have cities. We are trying to circular cities. But for us, this is our main goal: how to create this infrastructure, how to create this critical mass of entrepreneurs, of circular economy entrepreneurs and thinkers, because we need this to change the linear paradigm. So, well, thank you very much for this time. I hope you have a brief view of the SWIT program that we are developing here. So if I have some questions, and Eduardo, please go ahead. Thank you, Ken, for this space.